So when we look at Isa alayhi salam, we have to kind of envision ourselves and what kind of environment was he in? He wasn't, remember, he was a Semite, right? Originally of Egyptian descent, but Arab. And so who was he against? Who were these people, these rabbis that he was speaking out against? And a lot of the things that I'm telling you is from books either by Ibn al-Jawzi or some of the other scholars of the time, or I myself, having been raised in Texas much of my young life, I had to debate with a lot of Christians in high school, middle school, so I had to learn their deen. What am I speaking against? And this was prior to all the social media where you can just go online. So I myself have read the Bible at least 3 times, front to end. So there are a lot of things in there which do not contradict anything that we know from the Quran and the Sunnah. So you can take it as historical. His worst enemies, the one he was speaking at the most, were the Pharisees. Right? Pharisee, as spelled in the Bible. Who were the Pharisees? Why were these rabbis specifically so powerful? The Pharisees were, as the word describes them, Farsis. They were people from what is now modern-day Iran, Iran, and some of those surrounding areas, Persians basically. During the time of Cyrus the Great, about 300 years before Isa alayhi salam, they had migrated. They had migrated to Jerusalem, converted to Judaism, and they had a big hand in the power, in the religious power circles. Most of the biggest rabbis were Pharisees. These were the people dealing with the Romans. The Romans, while they controlled, much like if you look at a lot of Muslim countries today, controlled by Western powers on the inside, but on the outside, they allowed their own people to kind of have the ruling appearance. That way there wouldn't be an uprising. So the Romans, they controlled Asham, but they allowed the Pharisees to continue being the religious class and making it seem like they have control over their own people, so there wouldn't be an uprising. And these were the people that were the most corrupt. These were the people that were bringing in a lot of bid'ah into the deen. They were bringing in a lot of changes into the deen over the course of the last 300 years. So when Isa alayhi salam came into play to spread the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it was mainly against these people. Because all the other people were Jewish as well, by descent, Muslims by religion. But he was not speaking against all of them, just the Pharisees specifically. So now Isa alayhi salam, as we go back to where we had left off, Isa alayhi salam, he went and studied the deen. Now he became an alim, and so he must be in his early 20s. And at this point in time, Yahya alayhi salam was murdered. And for those who don't know, it's a long story, but he was murdered by one of the Roman governors. And so now that he was Shaheed, John the Baptist, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala passed the prophethood on to Isa alayhi salam. So now Isa alayhi salam's duty was to go from being an alim to spreading the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a prophet. So, and so now that he's an alim, remember Isa alayhi salam started debating with these ulama, the scholars of the time. But his mother gave him some wisdom. She taught him. She went to go send him to the schools of knowledge. Why? So that he could learn not only how to debate, but also gain ilm. So that when he does debate against these people, to spread the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would have a system, a formal education in deen. Today, you have a lot of people, they want to speak about deen, they want to debate about deen, they read a couple of books here and there, and they win once, twice, 3 times, and then they lose, and they look humiliated, and the 4th time, because somebody comes with more knowledge than they have of their own deen, and embarrasses them. And this is the reason why Isa alayhi salam's mother, Maryam alayhi salam, encouraged him to go learn the deen. So now that he's learned the deen, he comes and goes for the Pharisees. Because these were the leaders of Jerusalem. These were the people in charge of Bayt al-Maqdis. He notices that they've been doing a lot of changes in this deen. Something is not right. And it's not sitting right with him. So why are these people causing so much difference? I mean, and so he notices, for example, the Sabbath, which they would fast, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded them not to work. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the command not to work from this day, Friday sunset, till Saturday. Friday till Saturday sunset. This was what's called the Sabbath. So they were not supposed to work. That's it. As in, don't go to work. They changed it over time to where they would fast. They wouldn't eat anything. They wouldn't do anything. Even in case of somebody needed some help, they wouldn't go and help them, because this is also considered labor. So they went to an extreme that any form of labor was part of this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command, which was a lie. So Isa alayhi salam, he saw some children, they were shivering in the cold, and no one was allowed to go chop down some wood because it's the Sabbath. And these are poor children. So he went and chopped down the wood. And so the rabbis are looking at him like, what's he doing? This is the alim, one of us. What's he doing? He's breaking the Sabbath. So he takes the firewood and he sets it up, makes some food for some of the other children, and so forth and so on. Okay? And then he goes and takes some of the food, some of the fruits from the trees. As the children, some of the other children running around, they're hungry. They're told not to eat because it's Sabbath. He gives apples and so forth to the children. And now the rabbis are looking at him even worse. Like, what are you doing? It's like, imagine today's time, even though we're supposed to fast in Ramadan, but let's say somebody was breaking their fast in Ramadan and saying, you shouldn't have to fast. So we would look at him as, wow, you're literally breaking the deen. And this is how they looked at him. Why? Because over the course of centuries, they had changed the deen so much that now bid'ah became the norm. What was innovated, what was corrupted, was now seen through time and practice that this is the norm. And what was in the book, i.e. the Torah and the Sunnah of the prophets before him, as in our situation, the Quran and the Sunnah, was all left behind. Simple example being, you would never see any of the companions, any of the Muslims of the later generations, let alone the Prophet ﷺ, taking part in the celebrations of idolaters. But today you will see Muslims celebrating New Year's, celebrating birthdays, celebrating all Valentine, Halloween, all these things, no problem. So, over the course of time, now it has seemed, well, it's okay to do this. It's okay a little bit to do this. This is why the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَمَنْ تَشَبَحَ بِقَوْمٍ فَهُوَ مِنْهُمْ. Whoever imitates a nation becomes of them. Keep imitating them and you will become of them. So these people had now pushed the deen so far away, Isa alayhi salam put his foot down. And the rabbis weren't happy. So they came together and they said, we have to do something about this guy. What's going on? What do we do about this? So they go back and forth, speaking to one another, kind of like in the time of Rasulullah, right? The people of Quraysh. What are we going to do about Muhammad? If we don't stop him, he's going to overturn our way of life and our deen. And he's speaking out against what we're teaching, which is the true, correct way. And in the end, we're going to lose our grip on power from the Romans. And we're going to lose the wealth that we have accumulated. So as they're speaking this in this circle in Bayt al-Maqdis, Isa alayhi salam, he comes knocking on their doors with some of his companions.